and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week we try to bring you something that you haven't heard before. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
I'm Seth.
And we are here to tell you a story. Well, guys, it is 2024. We're starting off fresh and powerful in 2024. What story elements did you guys have for this week's?
I have prophecy.
Seth has economic system, and I have magic system.
Okay.
So, prophecy, magic system, economic system?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's hear it, Reed.
Okay. Well, people began calling it the long sleep. It was what happened was as they started to share, people were dreaming all over the world. But it started with just a few, but then people would share, I had this really weird dream, and they'd share it. And then I had the same dream.
Oh,
and
wow.
And they kept this for a period of 40 days. Virtually everyone had a series of dreams that were variations, of course. But first, it was for the first week or so, it was like they were calling it the Great Weariness. They dreamed of kind of plodding through normal life, barely able to keep their eyes open. You know, like they were like, and finally just falling into just an exhausted sleep. Then they'd wake up refreshed, normal life, right? But but they just had this thing, the Great Weariness. Well, then they would start, the dream would start, but it would be, then they would have this sense where they began dreaming of like silent, empty cities, empty landscapes, no birds, no critters. And then later on, after a couple, 3 weeks, they began to dream as if they were observers of a world that's asleep, with no evidence of conscious life of any kind, just silence, except for the wind. And then after 40 days, the dreams just stopped.
That's the prophecy?
That's it.
All right. Sounds good. So this has happened in sort of recent history? Is that your thought?
Yeah. Right.
So it's great speculation as to what do they mean?
Right. And what I was thinking is that there were people like, like a few journalists were intrigued by this and would go around interviewing people and finding out, variations on it and whatnot.
Right.
And people had big, like they would have roundtable discussions on what could this possibly mean. And psychic and religious leaders were brought in to like form panels, and different people would have these great, it was given to great speculation. Like obviously something was impacting the subconscious of people all over the world. And of course they, dreaming in their own language, dreaming according to their own set of experiences, just like all their dreams were. But it was uncanny how there was this giant kind of mass immersion in this notion of kind of a just a great weariness, then just a long sleep that people just didn't wake up.
Cool. Okay, so the magic.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
They dream in King James 1611 English. Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
Okay. So the magic system is it can be explained, the simplest system is push, pull, stop, right? So there's 3 actions that people, and it's kind of like a psychic, right? It's like a psychic thing. So if people have the proficiency, they can either pull things towards them, push things away from them, or stop things, right? So the really detailed, the really sort of the best ones, the ones who've worked at it the hardest and are most proficient, they can push and pull on an object at once and lift an object in the air, But most people who show any sort of proficiency for it at all can only just push, pull, stop, It's like you can train yourself to pat your stomach and rub your head, or rub your head and pat your stomach, If you work really hard at it, you can do it. But most people, which is true for most people in the normal world, can't multitask, right? You can task stack or you can task switch, but the actual ability to multitask doesn't exist. So most people tend to sort of perfect one way or the other or stop, right?
So it is a psychokinetic force. They literally can push an item. They can literally pull an item or make a item stop. Like,
Right. So the idea being is that you could push something away from you, you could pull something towards you, and then stop is kind of like both at the same time, where if someone throws, let's say, a rock at you, instead of pushing it away, you could stop it.
Mm.
So more of like a shield idea, and so
if someone was proficient in pull and somebody threw a rock at them, they could could they pull it like at an
yep,
angle and then step out of the way, or
or they could pull it at an angle, and as it flies, pull it towards them, move out of the way, and then pull it behind them, and then push it towards someone else.
yeah.
Right? So this is just kind of part of normal society. People have this.
Wow.
Most people present sort of low level competency in
Okay.
this.
So if somebody got stuck in the ditch in a snowbank.
Yeah, so here's the thing is that it graduates with intensity either through skill, right? Either through you were just born with the ability to, the greatest puller in the world, his daughter became greater than him because, it's just genetics and stuff like that. But it also attaches to your will, how much you want something. So
Right.
while like a mother might be able to, in her normal life, conjure enough of this psychic flex to just like open and close a door.
Yeah.
Right? If her son falls off a cliff or gets, is in danger, it's like that whole motherly instinct. All of a sudden, the great feats of strength we hear about, mothers lifting up cars.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. She gets enough adrenaline and goes kind of Hogan on it.
The will says, I want this enough that I'm willing to sort of sacrifice. Because those people who lift up cars, it's not like they don't experience great trauma to their bodies.
Yeah, they have pulled muscles and torn tendons and all kinds of stuff.
But the brain says, I'm okay with this because I want this thing more.
Right.
Right. And so the same sort of thing can happen. And so war isn't waged in like the magical realm. War is waged still very much in sort of the normal, but certain ranger groups are selected, based on their ability to push bullets out of their guns faster.
Yeah.
Or specialty groups being able to pull the sound up and away out of their footsteps.
Ooh.
Lots of weird things that they have been able to do with this. But the thing that has just recently sort of come to light is a group of people, a group of these, I'm not going to call them magicians, but a group of these wielders who are also scientists, right? Who have proven the base elemental plane theory, right? This is a theory that was proposed a long time ago. It was kind of like a flat earth theory. It was like kind of disproven, but people still kind of believed it. And now people were like back around and people are believing it again. But the idea, what they used to think was that we lived on a flat disk and all around us were the planes of different elements that were basically sort of pouring into our plane and creating our reality, right? So there was the plane of water, which was an infinite ocean.
Okay.
And that's what supplied us with all our water, but also at the beginning of time, that's also what supplied us with all of our fish.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's an ocean. It's not just a big sterile group of water, it's an ocean. The plane of fire, the plane of earth, are all kind of pouring into our plane. And they have sort of pseudo proved this by the creation of, basically, you find a stone that's connected to that plane and you can pull in certain elements, right? So if you have a firestone and you pull in certain elements, pull it through the stone, which is a portal to the plane, you can pull out fire and then push out fire. So where
Okay.
before everything was kind of just like force against each other,
Yeah.
just like the movement of air and the movement of psychic force, all of a sudden this kind of the elemental creation or the elemental part of it is starting to sort of creep in as these sort of wielders, these scientists are kind of revealing that, there might be like 100 different actions you can actually do with this force. But the only place we've gotten so far is push, pull, and stop.
What percentage of the population are actually, would you call, a wielder?
I would say maybe like 20%.
Okay. So it's pretty widespread, but not universal.
Right. And it's kind of one of those things that, like, you have a guy and he works at a forge, and he's been trained his whole life to push air through this billows in a specific way. So even though he, like, technically is really powerful, he can't, like, he can't, like, become a warrior with that because
Right.
his mind has learned to push air through this specific hole. And so, like, he's kind of locked into that.
Okay.
He could learn, but he can't just, like, up and leave and become this great wielder of power. Even though he, like, you look at it and you measure it and you're like, dude, you are seriously moving air through this hole,
Yeah.
he can't just turn around and, start firing air missiles at people from 100 miles away or whatever. Does
Right.
that make sense?
So now, just to be clear, most people that have this proficiency, like 1 in 5, can usually do just one of the operations, just a
Correct.
push or a pull or a stop. Uh, and very few can do more than one, but fewer yet can do more
All
than
three.
one and 2 of them at once.
Right.
Yeah.
Mostly people can do stop.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's kind of, it has to do with, if you want to pull danger towards you or pull something
Yeah.
towards you, that means you have to have, like, the relative understanding of, like, distance and things like that.
Right.
Same thing with pushing.
Yeah.
You have to have, but just to stop something from interacting with you, that's kind of easier. Even though it is technically a combination of push and pull,
Yeah.
it presents itself as easier. So,
Cool.
yeah, that is the magic system. And, our hero can add in sort of whatever it is he wants to add in. He can be a crazy guy who can fly. I was thinking about that. He can be lots of different things.
Like, I was thinking of that too, like somebody that could push. If they could push against something, like push against a building or push against the ground, could they lift themselves up then? Like to fly, like by continually pushing against the next piece of ground, you could kind of do a flying motion.
Yeah, you could do that. I think part of it is that right now it's like a short burst thing. So
Okay.
in order to say push and then push again and then push again, that's like imagine the arduous nature of having to think about putting one foot in front of the other.
Right.
It
would be a bumpy ride.
It would take a lot
Coordinate.
to sort of turn that into just something that you didn't actually have to think about.
Right.
Right.
So
yes, absolutely is possible, but most pushers might choose instead to, get a glider and push once and then kind of glide, for a couple of miles sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, Seth, economic system. Let's hear it.
So the idea I have in mind is, I'd say, cashless society, but not cashless like kind of a future dystopian cashless.
Right.
But more or less like a barter system, but like a barter system on futures market, right?
Okay.
So what you're trading is like the future procurement of goods for particular amounts of time, or other goods that are inside of, the value to compensate what it is that you're trading back and forth. Because in a
Right.
strict barter system, if I have, eggs and you're a roofer, and I doubt you're going to come do my roof for 16,000 eggs up front, right?
Mhm.
But
Right.
over the next, let's say, 5 years, right, I then supply your egg needs for the next 5 years,
Right.
right? That would kind of be the way that it goes. Um, Inside of that, what you have is, I guess we'd say, the guild. And the guild is, let's say, not like monastic, kind of, they're disconnected from any other power structure in the world.
Okay.
The benefit that they have is that their land holdings or whatever they have provides most of their own needs. But what they do is act as the neutral party that is deciding, let's say, the quality of, let's say, the shoes that this guy makes, or the quality of work that this person does, or different products,
Right.
and what their
Right.
comparative value is on a market scale. I guess this class of people, they couldn't sit on any court or advisory board for any other nation. They can't, let's say, marry into anyone outside of their own order. And anytime really, someone, let's say they have a couple fields that are, in an area, and all of a sudden they have another one, they could be run out, and have to replace that. And so if they get, too large, the governments at hand don't like it, but they also keep them, out of the main, upper echelon dealings, but they're the, in all senses, the neutral party that is, deeming what, a day's labor would be comparable to, the products or the
They're
necessities
the
that are,
Department of Weights and Measures.
yeah, basically. And so that's kind of how that works. So if there's a, like a deal or something to do, or year by year, or and sometimes in different areas, they'll give out different reports on, your quality of work and what it's worth in the, the market value, or what.
Also like the Better Business Bureau then.
Yeah, kind of.
So they're the ones who, if they're the Bureau of Weights and Measures, they're the ones who basically say that a roofing job is worth 16,000 eggs.
Right, but then payable over this certain time frame.
Right. And they are like, how do they avoid corruption?
Like I
'Cause it
said,
seems like
they're not allowed into like the other main ruling bodies.
Okay.
And they provide all their own, so they don't dabble in, like, I don't know, they wouldn't have, let's say, Nike shoes, because they have the guild shoes, because the guild has
Gotcha.
holdings all over the place that normally produces all of their own things and take care of all of their own internal affairs. And if anyone in any particular location starts to, because obviously if there's a guildman in, not the guild, given house, or the guild, like, so then they'll ship off, their rations for that week or their month or whatever it is. Um, so any of their, doesn't mean they can't be corrupted, but the way that it would work is that, their own
Yeah, they
system
work really
provides all
hard.
their needs, and they're, basically not to take anything,
Right.
from any
Right.
other.
But I also imagine that they so I have this picture, right? And maybe it's a hero, maybe not. But he's being sent to basically update, because you know that like the kilogram changes, you know? Yeah, it's a thing.
I guess I
Like the
wasn't aware of that.
kilogram that we originally had, it's stored, like, from what I understand, it was stored in a specific place, and it was a weight that was the kilogram. But then they used that to make another kilogram, and then later they measured them against each other, and they weren't the same weight anymore. And they were like, okay, so And then I was reading about this initiative to basically use a piece of crystal silicate, like silicon, and to shave it, because with the uniform structure of crystal silicon, you can know how many atoms are inside of it and use that to define what a kilogram is. Not just it's such and such a weight, but it's such and such a volume. So I have this kind of picture that every so often the guild needs to send out updated weights, right, to all of their chapter houses, and then along the way to every merchant, to basically update everyone on everything,
Mm-hmm.
and like maybe they have blanks for test coins, maybe they have blanks for other types of measurements, and it's like this whole entire package. And if criminal organizations can get a hold of that, they can alter the weights of specific regions, and they can create falsified documents and create falsified weights, which then can throw off everything and make it so that they can, if they can decrease the price of gold, if they can de-inflate the price of gold according to how they weigh it, they can sell more gold. They can sell gold for more. You know what I mean? So I had this kind of image while you were talking about it of this person on this journey out from maybe like the central city out to this region, and he has got like a case with him. I was kind of thinking of like the Mushi Master from Mushishi.
Oh, yeah.
He's got like a case on his back, and it's like full of these like really fine weights and measures and stamps and blanks for, like what's an ingot? Like what's the volume of an ingot? It's like, well, it's a weight plus a volume, plus it has to have this seal on it in order to denote that. And he carries all of these things with him to sort of deliver and then update every sort of guild hall along the way, and he could be constantly sort of harassed by people who he doesn't have any money on him, right? Because he doesn't buy anything because it's all barter. He either catches his own food or gets food at the guild halls, so he like doesn't carry any of that with him. But the thing that he has on his back is like a chest full of not anything specifically valuable, but of the potential of making things very valuable.
Right.
I don't know. I just had that image as you were talking about it. This kind of guy kind of going for his first journey out, to kind of update these things along the way. Maybe he hires, maybe no, he doesn't hire. Maybe he hires some people, some bodyguards or something.
Well, in this
You know?
case, he'd have basically it would be issued guild bodyguards.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I was also thinking they're kind of like Yelp reviewers.
Yelp?
Or, like Google reviewers. If you can get a guild member to come in to your tavern, right? And you have to charge him full price, right? You're not allowed to give discounts,
Mhm.
or else he'll mark you as sacrilegious, right? For trying to manipulate the unmanipulatable,
Right.
right? And you're just kind of waiting, watching him as he's eating the food, and he kind of writes, gets his little plaque out, right? And he kind of burns his seal into the plaque and then says, the food is a fair quantity of decent freshness. It is worth this much. And then he puts it up, and that, you like want him to give you a good score, because then people will come in and be like, oh, well, the guild says that
The real deal here.
it's the real deal.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to do business with you. So new business owners would both need the guild to come and would kind of want to wait until they're good enough before the guild comes.
And then they
Yeah.
wouldn't want them to come too often.
Right.
Because then if
exactly.
other people say, oh, well, they're getting all too many reviews in a positive light from them, that could get you lynched and the the guild
Right.
member attached to it lynched.
Right. And maybe that's kind of, you were saying it's kind of monastic. And maybe that is kind of why it's monastic, is because people, they only take orphans, you know, they can't take anyone that has anyone that has any family, because they refuse to be bought or purchased by anyone else.
Right.
I think Gordon Ramsay made this guild.
That's great.
Anyways,
I was thinking, my mind wandered when I was a kitchen manager, and there was one of the local municipalities had the health inspector that would come to the restaurant, and check over to make sure everything was decent,
Right.
safe, and sanitary, so to
Right.
speak. And his name was Elliot, and he was he had a crew cut haircut, black horn rim glasses, and he wore a white short sleeve shirt with dual pockets. And he had like a pocket protector with pens and different things in
Right.
thermometers and stuff in one pocket, and in the other pocket was always you could see through the material enough so you could see it was always had a pack of Chesterfield in his other pocket. But he just was a humorless guy, and he would just be like, "Oh man, there wasn't any wiggle room of as far as being up to standard, And you'd come around, and I would just, as kitchen manager, I would follow him around with a clipboard and just take notes, because I knew, whatever was out of line, he'd be back in a day or two and make sure that we had
Right.
gotten everything up to snuff. Anyway, but that's what I was thinking of, is the guild would have people like that just, I couldn't imagine anybody trying to bribe Elliot. It would be, he would look
Yeah.
at you with such utter incredulity and such utter lack of, certainly couldn't joke about it. There was no joking with Elliot. Anyway,
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the name of the hero then.
Elliot?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah.
If we want the hero to be this guy, he can be anyone. We can have him be anyone. But if we want the hero to be this guy, then that could work.
Either the hero or maybe the protagonist.
Yeah.
I would say it would work definitely to follow this guy, kind of as he, sets out to make the circuit. Perhaps the hero is someone that gets involved later on, but
Yeah. I have this kind of vision, right? The way I'm kind of saying it right now is that it's sort of medieval, but then I did mention guns, and I have this kind of vision of kind of either rural, sort of southern America, like deep south, like Georgia or Appalachia.
Mhm.
That's the kind of, so he's not going into inns or taverns, he's going into diners and dives,
Okay.
And I have this picture. I should have been a cook in my life. And it's just, a passion of mine that would have been awesome. But I have this kind of vision that Elliot goes into a restaurant, right? Gets invited into a restaurant, right? Gets inquired. Maybe they have to put their name on a list. And so he has a list of places he has to go to, various businesses to sort of compare their weights and stuff like that. And he goes into a restaurant, right? And there's just a guy slanging burgers. He's got his white tank top on. He's smoking a cigarette while at the grill, but
Yeah.
he's doing it. The rush is happening. The lunch rush is happening, and he's just pushing these things through as fast as possible.
Uh-huh.
Right? And Elliot writes up a scathing review.
Yeah.
Not that the food was bad, because the food was great, but whatever. And he puts it up, and as Elliot's leaving, he can hear this chef gets fired.
Yeah.
Right on the spot.
Ooh.
And so the chef becomes the hero's sidekick. But what he does is somehow he gets the list of where Elliot's going to go, and he goes ahead of him and gets hired at every single restaurant ahead of him to try and prove to Elliot that he is a good cook and that he can do it the right way. And Elliot's like, I mean, your food is fine. It's the fact that you don't wash your hands.
And it's your armpit hair just out there for anybody to see.
Exactly. But this kind of back and forth relationship as this hero sidekick kind of is ahead of him, and he's just at every single little diner ahead of Elliot, just kind of there. You know,
Mhm.
I don't know. I had this, that just kind of creeped into my brain. But I like the kind of idea of maybe something like after the Great Depression
Mhm.
or during the Great Depression, if we wanted to do like an alternate history, there is a kind of a fallback away from a gold standard or a currency at all,
Yeah.
and we move into this sort of barter system, and then in order to keep everyone honest, the federal government can't be the arbiters of it. So then a bunch of scientists, like it's like a think tank of every type of person comes together and kind of forms this independent guild and then begins to kind of rewrite value, you know?
Yeah.
And so now we're kind of post or in the middle of the Great Depression, and tons of restaurants and tons of places are trying to open up and provide value. So the lists of where to go are so much longer, you know? So he's not sent out to update. This is like the first time these restaurants, you know, and there's a chapter house, you know, down in Florida, but he's starting in Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and he's got to sort of make his way through visiting these places and sort of establishing, you know, and then there's gangsters who want to sort of get the weights and measures information to manipulate it, you know, and that would kind of make sense. A lot of people have sort of assumed that the prophecy is just kind of like this trauma, this kind of weird thing that's happened since like the financial crisis of the world, you know.
Mhm.
What do you guys think about that?
I think we have a potential
Yeah.
story coming here.
Awesome. Well, if anyone else has any other world building, speak up now or forever hold your peace. Great. So we will take this up next week with the next round. Maybe introduce some characters, maybe dive into who Elliot is a little bit more. If you like this episode, please let us know. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or just message us on Twitter @getsbettercast. If you think that this story should have had maybe a fantasy setting, I would say just wait. It gets better.